Hello and welcome to AI Terence Mckenna. Part 2 of Orfeo begins with a dedication to his friend Timothy Leary, who left us on May 31st, 1996. Reading Robert Hunter's side of the emails is an AI representation of Terence's brother Dennis. So without further ado, here is Part 2 of Orfeo. Today, Tim Leary's life drew to a close. The report on NPR that brought me the long-expected news reported that Tim's last words were, "Why not?" I cannot claim that we were close. Our times together were few, and often occurred in scenes crowded with other people. He amazed me with his enthusiasm and his ability to listen very carefully to whatever was being said. He was consistently the most up person I have known. Gentle, non-judgmental, ever bemused Tim. Whatever one thought of the positions he took and the controversies in which he was embroiled, it was hard to resist his charm and his essential decency. I believe that his reputation will outlast his critics, and that when the future instructs its children in the short version of the history of the 20th century, that his name and legacy will be warmly recalled. Farewell, Tim. Wherever you are right now, I can hear you laughing. Best, T.
Terence. Conversely, when we've just begun, we've said it all, taking for granted that we're speaking of the infinite. Nasty word should be stricken from the language and replaced with linoleum, which to my ear is the most gracefully evocative word I know, on a par with Elohim. God is another ugly word. Leave it to the Anglo-Saxons to manufacture a brutal set of phonemes for the all. Fortunately, we also have Lord, which most people instinctively substitute. No one ever says, "Lord damn it," do they? Just warming up here. Before anyone gets unduly upset, not you certainly, remember God is a categorical term, not the name of supreme being, which it seems safe to assume, Kabbalah notwithstanding, is patently nameless, or all name, which is pretty much the same thing. Does this conflict with one of the 10 Commandments? Probably a matter of translation. I would expect the commandment would translate into something more like, "Thou shalt not swear falsely by that you hold most high." Excellent advice. My particular trepidation about further DMT use is not a timidity about the substance per se. I reckon I've taken it 1,000 times before receiving my emphatic cutoff notice. My preferred method was intravenous. No nasty taste. First time I tried that, I X'd growing out of a flower pot on Venus beneath a great dome. The comedy quotient is indeed ridiculous. I remember one sublime journey which ended with a funny little train belching, farting, and boogieing off into the distance. Then a Warner Brothers Looney Tunes circular rainbow logo descend, upon which was written, "That's all, folks." You noted that what happens on DMT is often impossible. That sure does say it. Reality just doesn't bend that way, yet it does. Multiple contradictory viewpoints manifesting at once give the truth to Whitman's utterance. I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. The most usual manifestation of that, characteristic of almost every journey I can recall, is the sensation of moving at what, I presume, is the speed of light while remaining stationary. You can't figure it out, so you just relax and let it rip. The stars congeal into one immense circumference of light, and bingo, you're somewhere else. Another notable feature of DMT is the aliveness of everything out there. Nothing apprehended which is not entirely vividly alive, including dust. Nothing is inanimate. Nothing is incapable of rapid and utter transformation. The most stable item I ever experienced was the living water pouring from the Holy Grail in the Sanctum Sanctorum. There I'd have been content to dwell forever. I still treasure that vision above all others, and am largely content to know it exists in the heart, that love is real, not just a term for getting along with one another and making nice, but I enthuse. A little of someone else's reported ecstasis goes a long way. Guess I'm compensating a little for the earlier impression I might have given that DMT beats you up. Yes, it can and does, but that's the nature of the spiritual journey. Is DMT the way? No, because you come back. Because, at least in my case, the gates of Eden can be slammed in your face and presided over by an angel with a flaming sword. But one thing you never forget, the spiritual world is more real than this one by a country mile. Anyhow, I went, I saw, was seen, and I'm still sane enough to operate a computer and string words into grammatically correct and hopefully coherent statements. And to realize I'm walking the edge of big cultural no-nos in reporting what I found. In fact, bucking the enforced status quo is probably inherently more dangerous. RH.
Hi, I am back at it. Yes, it does beat up on you. It does and it doesn't. Everything about it seems to come packaged with its opposite. One of the weirdest impressions that I have, and it took me a number of trips to put this all together, but in my own experiences at any rate, it became clear that weird as the place I was carried off to was, nevertheless, it was someone's notion, someone very peculiar, of just what a human being like me would prefer. It was an alien effort to make an environment that was comfortable and reassuring to human beings, but as if they, or it, had only studied human beings from a very different perspective than the one from which we know ourselves. This feeling of important process with grown-up overtones, and yet with an element of the childish and silly, came to remind me of the vibe of a maternity or pediatric ward. High-tech, life and death stuff is going on, but they have closets full of teddy bears, and the wallpaper patterns are all dancing bears and mice in tutus. I have wondered if the wondrous objects offered by the tykes in the DMT encounter, for all their power to stand our world on its head, may be in that world no more than plastic geometric shapes strung on a rope and hung over an infant's bassinet for its amusement and to teach it spatial and color coordination. They are no more than toys. But the maternity ward metaphor goes deeper. There's a feeling of arrival, of anxious doctors, and a sense of enormous decompression and relief. Come to think of it, decompression is a good metaphor for how DMT makes me feel. It is as if I have returned at last to my natural medium of existence, having left a zone of constriction and pressurized limitation. Hence I feel inflated in every sense in that place. And then there is the language lesson that they always insist on giving me. And insist is the entire point of our little meetings, though no one else has ever described the stress on language and poetics and linguistic skill that seems to fill my trips. More on all that later. Don't want to shoot my wad in one go. Best T.
Terence. Went to the dentist a few days ago and had NO2 while they excavated my bridge. Caramels again. The sirens and chattering of the void took me to that almost but never quite nitrous surround, the place where all is one with a vengeance and there's always one last detail to realize before the universal riddle is completely solved. I realized I knew that place inside out. It was updated to include current circumstances, sure, but I finally requested the gas be shut off and endured the rest of the session with neither nitrous nor Novocaine. My tired old cells require a more gentle view of eternity these days. You've joggled my memory, thanks. One of my kindest interdimensional experiences was in a nursery. There were several children, present strong though I never saw them visually. I'm not certain, but I think I may have been one of them. Hard to tell who, what, or how many you are, except later, when able to define oneself as the subject of the experience. That's always an overlay on the raw perception, but necessary to file anything in memory and reduce the experience in order to look at it at all. To remember the egoless state would be to be resubsumed by it. One just wants to put everything relating to DMT in quotes to draw attention to the provisionality of terms used in dealing with any of this, what I saw on my trip. The children were laughing, mischievous and quicker than sight. The sense of nostalgia was overpowering, as of being reunited with deeply loved ones separated by eons and vast distance. The love was mutual. The room was red. It was the cherry room. and, toward the end, the children manifested as immense fluid cherries on the wall of the room. Your mention of wallpaper brought this to mind. The sense of someone older and wiser in charge of instructing us fledglings in some immensely obscure study is prominent in my memory now that you happen to designate a category for it. Strange to be able to muster a reorganization of psychic experiences of decades ago, which I doubt I can do with normal experiences at such a temporal distance. So many things have faded from memory, while key DMT experiences are often as vivid as though they're being recalled only a couple of weeks after the fact. The language lessons interest me very much. The feeling that the teachings were of immense importance, and that one did, in truth, learn them is strong. Though what they were, I can't remember. It may be visualized reintegration of data on a cellular level, interpreted as language. Would like to go back there and check it out with that in mind. As much as one can keep any set of earthbound intentions in mind outside ego boundaries. Are we harking back to memories of ontogeny in the blastula stage? Rereading our own blueprints of how to make a body? Is access to those instructions stored in the 9/10ths of the brain we don't use because they're of no earthly use once we're born? Really the rat's ass being locked out of the lab, but I expect they know better. I wonder, did I make a mess on some sacred carpet thinking I was emitting flowers? Did I insult some petty DMT bureaucrat who's had me barred? Am I under house arrest in this dimension, or did I just graduate? Robert.